Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Good.
Did you get your check from USAID yet?
I know, but I filled out all the paperwork. No, but the thing of it is, are you? Do you know the right people? When I was in the military, I went to the training for a flight surgeon, and I met another doctor who was in the same class, same age, graduated from medical school the same way, and we got to know each other. And when we got out, he went and joined the National Guard, and I thought it would benefit me because I was surviving.
Yeah.
So I went into the Guard too. But we both went into the active duty as captains. We both came out as captains, but immediately when we went into the reserves, he became a major. So I say, well, how in the world did you do that so fast? He said, it's who you know.
It's who you know. That's a life lesson.
But I noticed that in the military. It's a shame because you're trained to take care of people. But the motivation, even as a physician, is that you're not being rewarded for what you do. You don't have responsibility for pleasing your patient. If they give you 20 physicals to do, it's how fast you get to physical. Anyway, that's a different story. But that was a personal thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is also personal. What we want to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure.
And headline on Breitbart is Trump freezes millions in USAID funds for foreign media. Foreign media, wow. Triggering globalist outrage. I did see a few liberals and Democrats. They're a little bit scared.
Yeah.
They're annoyed and mean and nasty too. So, anybody that thinks that this is a joke, I have to be questioned, because I think this is what we're seeing now, and Trump is leading, a counter-revolution for what they at least in the last 20 years or so, all this nonsense that's going on with cultural Marxism and all. So he is leading the charge, and with hints that he is sympathetic to some libertarian ideas, but he's also does some things that we say, hey, why are you doing that? Well, it's probably because he never declared I'm a devout libertarian. So, but he I think has started the ball rolling, attacking the nonsense going, whether it was DEI or whatever. So I think this is very, very good that he's leading the charge, and it looks like the business people are rolling over too. Yeah. All of a sudden, that's the thing. Before it was if you didn't do it, it was going to hurt your bottom line. Now the bottom line. So this is attitudes. This is a view, a general attitude that is being recognized, and I think that's more important than how slick you are in Congress. Eventually, the attitude of the people, but over a course of decades, the attitude of the people is just more and more and more. It still exists, but now it's being challenged, and the people who are being challenged, it isn't so much, you don't hear as much from the people who are losing their benefits, even though they're annoyed. It's the people who are losing their power and access to these funds. But there's still some of that going on, but you got to give them credit, I think Trump credit, that I think they're very sincere and called some of this stuff off. And quite frankly, Daniel, I think it's a lot worse than I thought. Maybe it was a lot worse than what you expected too.
It is, and everyone's talking about it this morning. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday on the show. We talked about the fact that Politico was getting paid by USAID, and the New York Times were getting paid by USAID. But it's like you scratch the surface, and then there's this massive iceberg underneath it. We've only looked at the top of it. So put on that first clip. This is what Breitbart put out. Trump freezes millions in USAID funds for foreign media. Foreign media. If we can get that first one up, we'll get that going. Foreign media. So the idea that the U.S. government is funding the foreign media. I mean, it really is, you talk about manufacturing consent. This is what the U.S. government does. It manufactures consent. It pays all the foreign media to say what it wants it to say, and then it tells Americans, look, the BBC's saying it, the Times is saying it, whatever. So go to the next one. There's actually some numbers on this, and this is from the article. American taxpayers are no longer subsidizing foreign media once funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, prompting left-wing concern for the political impact on global journalism and democracy. Now look at some of these numbers, Dr. Paul. President Donald Trump put a 90-day hold on all USAID's foreign aid this week, which subsequently cut $268 million from media outlets in more than 30 countries, according to the agency's 25 foreign budget reported by Reporters Without Borders. USAID's 2023 fact sheet taken offline due to the hold boasted that the agency supported 6,200 journalists, 707 news outlets, 279 media sector civil society organizations, i.e. NGOs, the Columbia Journalism Review reported. So what does this do, Dr. Paul, overseas with thousands and thousands on the U.S. payroll?
To me, it's amazing that it hasn't caused a collapse of the system when they see so much waste going on. But it also proves that we have been a very, very wealthy country and very, very powerful. But from my view, it's temporary. It's good when you're borrowing money and your credit's good. It's good, but we're moving into part of an against the insurrection, and people are being they're finding out that it is done on borrowed money and it's short-lived. So I keep emphasizing the business of inflation. None of this happens if there's no. How do they do this? They have to have the money.
Yeah.
So the money is created. And some probably not reported. It probably doesn't go into because not everything that the Fed does is known. So it's the inflation of the money supply, and then this money is spent. And we preach the gospel that if you do that, the value of the dollar is going down, the prices are going up, and the people are misled if they say it's price gouging, and labor wants too much money, and try to emphasize labor. But in this case, this is ready access to money from the government is malinvestment. It isn't part of the inflation that goes on and prices going up. And this is just think of much. This is I don't even think that they know how incestuous this is.
Yeah.
This is huge, and I keep thinking I don't go too far in this. If you just got rid of all of this, it would be a big boost. But we have to institutionalize a concept of constitutionalism. That means that we want our freedom back.
Yeah, and it's not even really the money, because $268 billion seems to me like a lot of money. But in the big scheme of things, with our our debt and everything, it really isn't. But what it does is it severely restricts global expression, the expression of individuals. How much does it affect elections overseas? When you have a media outlet in the pay of a foreign government and it's going to report what that government wants, what does that do for freedom of expression, freedom of having elections overseas? It's a revolution, really.
It's similar to the nonsense that was finally exposed was the social media and the government getting together and they cancel people that didn't agree with the COVID.
Yeah, COVID, yeah.
So this is another coalition put together, and that is business people and government, and using these funds to, once again, though, this is similar to COVID, is to affect opinions, and get people upset and get the support they need. And so the neatest thing is happening, and it has to continue, is the exposure.
Yeah.
You mentioned the amount. Yeah, it might not be $30 billion, but overall, when you add up all the nonsense that goes on everything the government does, I think. From my viewpoint, about 80% of it, if we got rid of and let the people decide how the money be spent, there'd be a lot more wealth and a lot less people out in the street and a lot less wars. But hopefully we continue to move in this direction.
Well, when we've been talking since 2014, really, about the Maidan coup in Ukraine, and whenever we point out the involvement of the U.S. government in it, they say, oh, you're just using Russian talking points. Oh, you're on Putin's payroll. Well, it actually turns out that the other side is on Uncle Sam's payroll. They're the ones that are on the payroll. They're the ones that have manufactured this misinformation, disinformation about what had happened, and not only there, but elsewhere, everywhere. I mean, Viktor Orban from Hungary, I talked about it yesterday, he put out another post on X Day talking about, the cat's out of the bag now. All of the media in Hungary that was attacking the government is funded by the U.S. government, and it's amazing. Now, Trump is known for bombast when he goes on his Truth Social, and this one is slightly bombastic, but put on that next clip, Dr. Paul, he has a good point here. He says, it looks like billions of dollars have been stolen at USAID and other agencies. Most of it going to the fake news media as a payoff for creating good stories about the Democrats. The left-wing rag known as Politico seems to have received $8 million. Did the New York Times receive money? Who else did? And this is the part I think he's actually right. This could be the biggest scandal of them all. Leave it up, please. I'm reading it. This could be the biggest scandal of them all, perhaps the biggest scandal in history. The Democrats can't hide from this one. Too big, too dirty. I don't like it being put in partisan terms because I do think there are plenty of Republicans who are interventionists who would agree with this as well. Nevertheless, this could be one of the biggest scandals in history.
I like it when Trump mentions words like "this is stolen," and that's what's happening. But there's two steps in the stealing. He's saying it's stolen from USAID, but where USAID get a lot of this money?
Yeah.
It's from the taxpayer.
It's from us,
it's when they take it from the people. That's why taxation is theft. And in this case here, one group of government agencies and other pseudo-government agencies to control speech and control the media in order to promote more of this nonsense and more of the wars or whatever they're after, more COVID and more Ukraines. So
yes.
This is evil.
It's evil, and it also, it creates a false sense of reality. If you pay every news outlet to say the same thing, and that thing is a lie, it's disinformation, it's a false sense of reality because it seems like it's true. Now, you could say that maybe this is only a little bit of money going. This really doesn't have an effect on these media outlets. We'll go to the next one. Here's a post by WikiLeaks. Now, they restate the USAID funding 6,200 journalists across 700 outlets, but they also have a clip from another article. This is from Reporters Sans Frontières, Reporters Without Borders, and this is what they're talking about. And they hate this cut because they like this, but if you go to the next one, you can see just how effective they are, Dr. Paul. All over the world, media outlets and organizations have had to halt some of their activities overnight. Quote, "We have articles scheduled to the end of January, but after that, if we haven't found solutions, we won't be able to publish anymore," explains the journalist. Throughout the world, boom, overnight, they can no longer function because they're no longer being funded by the U.S. government.
It makes it tough. I think business people and bankers and all have to anticipate the future. That's their job if you're a good business person. But I think that when government does something, or the Fed does something, or they think the Fed's going to do something and change interest rates, they say, well, this will lead to ABC, and they anticipate and adjust their investments. And on these programs like this, I don't think that means they endorse it all. I think what they do is they anticipate and interpret the evil. How am I going to benefit from this? And they themselves might know darn well it's not a good thing, but we'll be on our toes. But I bet they weren't on their toes on this clampdown by Trump because it's a little bit more extensive than anybody dreamed.
Yeah, exactly. And I found a little clip on X, a post of RFK Jr. Now, this wasn't yesterday, but he's talking about it, and he actually really explains it well. You might want to get your earpiece, and let's listen to that first clip of RFK talking about how the U.S. government controls the media.
You will say science is what CDC says it is. And I say to them, journalists are supposed to maintain a posture of fierce skepticism toward government officials. They're now doing the opposite. They have become propagandists for the government. Now, why is that happening? You can't just say they're being bought off by pharmaceutical companies.
That's why I asked.
Part of that dynamic is a lot of influence by the intelligence agencies throughout the press. The largest funder today of journalism around the world. Mainly funded through USAID. They spend about $10 billion a year funding journalism around the world. But there are two things happened. One, the Patriot Act, and then President Obama issued an executive order that allowed the CIA to begin propagandizing Americans again. And we started seeing then press become overt kind of propaganda vessels for CIA.
I understand.
That's incredible, you know, it really is.
As he said about the CIA, he has a healthy skepticism
Yeah.
about the CIA,
Yeah,
and there's good
exactly.
reason for that.
Exactly.
So
that's what they're doing. And then you might say, well, these are a couple little NGOs overseas. These are little press outlets. It's not a big deal. Go to the next one. Now, Mario Nawfal has a post that he put up. It's not just the little NGOs, Dr. Paul. It is the BBC. And here's his post today. The BBC is unhappy about U.S. government funding cut. The BBC, through its international charity arm, BBC Media Action, has expressed its dissatisfaction with the recent decision by the U.S. government to pause funding. The impact of the pause, and I highlighted this, which affected approximately 8% of their income for the fiscal year of 23-24, left them quite baffled. And then Mario comments, meanwhile, U.S. citizens are baffled themselves. Wait, we're paying for the BBC? And the question is how much? Go to the next clip. How much are we paying for the BBC? Well, that blue mark you see up there is USAID. The United States government is the second largest funder, after the UK government, the second largest funder of the BBC. This is incredible. We literally are the second largest donor to the BBC. No wonder they toe the line that Washington wants them to toe.
you know, to me, it's Great Britain are obedient members of the empire.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not independent, and in a way, a lot of this represents. And Trump goes Trump goes along with a lot of this, and in a little different fashion. But it might be threats, it might be innuendos, it might be coups, and yet it is maintained. And we, as long as we have the printing press, this goes on unless somebody puts their foot in the brake.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening right now. So let's help apply the brake.
Yeah, I mean, it's just corruption. It's massive corruption to create a fake reality that we have to pay to get propagandized. Now, there was a funny kind of little meme going around a while ago about how all of our news networks seem to be reading from the same choir sheet. And I actually brought that clip up because people are posting it a lot on X. And it was funny and it was kind of a joke, but it's actually not that funny anymore. If you put your earpiece in, this is kind of chilling, and there's a reason why I think this is happening, because they're all being funded by the government to say something. You might want to grab your earpiece and listen to this. It was a joke a while ago. It's not that funny anymore.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
We are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
the sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories they simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias.
I mean, they're all saying the exact same thing. So now we wonder why reality seems to have been distorted.
But you know, the first time I ever thought about this issue is when we had three major networks. And I started realizing not only were they talking about the same issue, and we talk about some of these issues too, they had the same words. And I think that's what you're pointing out.
Yeah.
This is the same thing.
Same words.
These are the talking points.
Yeah.
And there's been people put them up, you know, the pro-liberty people putting them up. Look at this, I have it one after another. The evidence is there. It's a shame that we put up with it for so long.
Yeah.
And people are waking up now, because one way it's pragmatism is, you know, if we don't stop this money going to Ukraine, eventually it's going to hit us.
Yeah.
And if they ever realize it already has, it's not going to be tomorrow or the next day. If you don't like prices going up, you better say it's already hitting us.
Yes. And it's also, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, it also distorts the market. Because if you're getting $1 billion in funding from the U.S. government, or even $100 million, even $1 million, you have more journalists, you have more reach, but that's all artificial. That's not based on the market. The market is not saying, hey, I really like New York Times, I really like Politico, therefore they're able to raise more ad revenue, etc. It's not the market speaking. It's fake. It's the U.S. government propping them up so they look like they're more popular than they actually are.
Yeah, it's not a. They're not representing what I refer to as a prevailing attitude, and that is what the people are really thinking and reflecting their education. And of course, the prevailing attitude, I think, for 70 years plus, has been progressive. Because of our schools and whatnot. So, but this is a little bit more aggressive and very annoying. But also, it should be a warning sign. And also an explanation on why Trump has been successful so far. And but I still believe that a casual exposure of a program that we think we shouldn't be involved in, because there's some of that in foreign policy still exists.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out, Dr. Paul, by reminding people we've got a lot to talk about, and we've got a lot to talk about next month down here in Lake Jackson. Put on that last clip if you don't mind. America in the age of Trump 2.0. Lots of stuff annoys us. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, Dr. Paul, with the Gaza stuff. That's blown up in Trump's face. We didn't talk about it today, but it really has blown up in his face. Stuff we like, exposing the deep corruption in how the government manipulates ideas through its subsidization of the media. A lot of good, a lot of bad, and we got a lot of great speakers to bring it up. So there is a link in the description of today's show where you can grab those tickets. You're going to get a early bird discount. Get them before the end of the month. Get them today. Get that early bird discount, save a little bit of money, meet some great people, and hear some great talks.
That sounds so good, I'm coming.
You better.
Okay, I want to finish with another tidbit, a little bit different than what we've been talking about so far today. And that has to be an article that caught my attention today. It was in Zero Hedge, but it was a quote from Epoch Times. And the title is Judge Blocks Trump's Orders to Transfer Men Who Identify as Women to Male Prisons. I thought, now what's their justification? You read it, you find out. They are following the Constitution. The Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Well, now, I thought, who's being punished? If you're doing this and you have affirmative action and have males run races against girls and that sort of thing, who's the victim going to be? So here it is, the people who are suffering from this, it's getting cruel and unusual punishment, are the people who have to do it. So there were just several. They said, "Oh, well, we're only going to be 3 individuals who haven't figured out what their sex is, but we'll put them. They look male to us, but we're going to put them in with the girls. Maybe they can sort it out." They do that, and they say they have this right to do this. It's cruel and unusual punishment if you don't any nonsense that comes into their head of what should happen, and they then go ahead and do this. But they can't do that. What about the suffering of the people that had to put up with all this nonsense, especially for the last 20 or 25 years? And I think the worst part is how the business people rolled over and just, oh, what do I do now? I want to be on the good side because I might have to get a low interest loan. So they roll over and play this part, and it was so sickening, is an interesting word, during COVID. How the business people rolled over. And what happened if you had a doctor or a medical professional stand up and say, hey, why don't you stop and think? Why don't you let the patient and some different doctors talk it over and have them make a decision? What about this idea that you have a doctor-patient relationship and you don't have an interference and a dictator coming out of the federal government, the FDA, who's aligned with all the pharmaceutical companies that dictate all the rules? So I think now there's a shift going on. I sure hope it's successful. But who would ever dream that the incest that's possible with all this is so much worse than anybody dreamed. But I never stopped and say, oh, don't worry, the world's coming to an end tomorrow. I always said, that is so bad. it'll eventually wake up the people, and fortunately I think the people are starting to wake up, and we're going to encourage them to look into this really radical idea of promoting peace and prosperity with personal liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.